Okay, so my second song is called I Don't Know You Anymore, and it's about an event in my life that was very significant to me. I was originally homeless and living on the streets in downtown Kitchener. This man that I told to stay out of my life refused to leave me alone after a landlord and tenant board meeting that I invited him to as a witness. I wanted him there as a witness that I had fixed my floor in my apartment because it was infested with maggots. I wanted him to leave right after the meeting, and I was hoping that would be the last time I ever saw him. However, after the meeting, he followed me out of the meeting and started talking to me. I asked him to leave me alone. I almost would have considered him a friend when I first met him, but if he hadn't have asked me if I wanted my head cut off, and if he hadn't have said he didn't kidnap me yet, well, he said those things, so obviously I don't consider him. I never considered him a friend as much as he considered me as his friend. I asked him to leave me alone, and the thing is, in the first summer that we met, he said those things, and I suffer every day with this looming paranoia that I'm going to get my head cut off, and, I was paranoid for like a year that somebody was going to kidnap me, and then at the right moment when I was, sick, I was homeless, and I was, really an easy target, this guy forced me into his house. So it's kind of reasonable that I felt threatened and then paranoid from this, from these things that happened, from these things he said. And I told him we aren't friends and to leave me alone. I specifically said, "You're not my friend, you're not my acquaintance, nor are you my boyfriend. Get away from me." He kept asking me if I needed a ride after the landlord and tenant board meeting. He asked me if I wanted a ride somewhere, and I kept saying no. I left in a really big huff because he kept harassing me, and he followed out after me, calling out and asking me if I wanted a ride still. I continued to say no, and I yelled at him to leave me alone, and he said all right, and he got into his truck and left. I finally felt relieved, but I was scared because he kind of acknowledged that I wanted to be left alone, although I didn't trust him, so I was afraid he would keep following me or make me get in his truck. I started walking towards the bus because I wanted to be downtown near the shelter so I could figure out food arrangements and clothes and a future place I could stay. And I was walking down on the sidewalk towards the bus stop as he drove past. I was thankful he finally was leaving me alone. Then I suddenly felt really exhausted and faint. My feet were killing me from lugging all my bags around everywhere, and I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and just started staring down at my feet because I was so exhausted. I felt like I was going to collapse, and I kept wishing that somebody was going to come by and save me from this horrible circumstance I was in. Of course, no one did, and unfortunately, by my luck, this man came driving past me again just to invite me to get another ride from him. He pulled up and opened the door from the inside, telling me to just get in. I was so flabbergasted I didn't understand why he was back, and it scared me. Yet, because I was so exhausted and I had nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, I finally gave in and I got into his truck. So I was exhausted and I passed out in his truck right after he put money in my bag. It was weird because as he was putting the money in the bag, started talking about something, but I couldn't hear him because I was tuning him out. I was staring into my bag at this money he threw at me, and I was just couldn't make sense of my situation at all. So yeah, after that I just kind of fell asleep and I was exhausted. And then he drove me to his house because I told him I had nowhere to go. He's like, where do you want me to drive you to? I said, I don't care. I'm on the streets anyway. And so he brought me to his house, and I didn't want to be in his house. So when we got to his house, he said, okay, get out, we're here. And I thought, where are we? As I was just, waking up. I awoke and got out of the car. I was confused and scared because I remembered his house from when we used to drive by when he took me to his work or when we did our day trip. I used to be scared of him because of this thing, like, we used to be almost friends when I first met him for like a few months, and then in the springtime, like May or something, May or June, he started talking about kidnapping me and cutting off my head, and suddenly I was just scared and I didn't know what to do. I didn't go to the police. I didn't tell anybody that this guy was threatening me, and I just sort of went along with whatever he wanted me to do. And one of those things was he wanted me to go traveling all across Ontario with him. So I did, just because I felt threatened. Otherwise, I probably would have been working or something constructive. Anyway, so I was confused about being there, and he took me to his back door. I'd never been in his house before, and considering all the things he said before, I was scared about going in his house. I was really paranoid. All I could think about was those moments where he was talking about kidnapping me and cutting off my head. He unlocked the door and opened it. He said, come on, let's go in. I walked up the steps and into his mudroom, and I just stood there. And then he opened the kitchen door and said, come on, go in. I go in and stand there, dumbfounded that I am finally in his house after all this time. I was concerned that now he brings me to his house. I'm homeless, and I've been deserted by everybody, and suddenly now he's bringing me to his house? When I found out I was losing my apartment, I asked him if I could rent it from his home, knowing full well that he was a threat to me, because I thought maybe there's nowhere else for me to go. I didn't know my options, and I never looked for housing on my own before. And he said no. And then, now that I'm homeless, he wants me to live in his house. It was weird. I'm just reading my notes. I wrote all of my thoughts down. So he unlocked his basement. There's like a padlock on it, so there's a sequence of numbers you have to punch in before the door will unlock. He opened the door and said to me to go downstairs, and I was looking down into this dark room, saying, down here? I didn't know what to do, and I was really scared because, it was dark, there was no light, and, it just seemed really creepy. Anyways, I still see this event as kidnapping, as me being kidnapped, because I didn't want to be brought there when I was. He brought me there on his own volition, without my asking. I didn't ask to be there. I didn't want to be here. But he made me come here, forced me to live in his basement, and he forced me to live in his bed. I wasn't allowed to watch TV or use the phone or leave the bed when I was first brought here. That's forcible confinement to a bed. That's degrading and disgusting. And he used to feed me scraps of food. burnt scraps of food and sometimes nothing. And like, because I've been cooperating all this time, I get freedoms and everything. Anyways, the better part of the song is when I'm singing about thanking God and like, thank God I have you, thank God I had you, stuff like that. That was about basically my best friend, because since the time of being brought into that house, I had been gone to the hospital, and my best friend Rudy, he came to the hospital, and he gave me an iPod for a gift, and it had a really good playlist on it. I was feeling really down about my situation, and I was feeling really depressed and suicidal, and I was having memory lapses. I couldn't remember things. And his playlist that he had on his iPod that he gave me was really helpful, because it just sort of took me out of the dark place that I was in and just sort of like made me feel comfortable again. And when I was singing about how I never made love like this, and I remember what it was like when we kissed, that's me describing, like, basically making love. Making love is not getting raped. Rape is not the same thing as making love. When you make love, that is a conscious decision between two people that love each other, who are, joining together for a common purpose. And when you're raped, that means you didn't want that. Only one person, it was one-sided. One person wanted that, and they don't care if you cry, yell, scream, scratch. They just don't care. All they want is your body for their own taking. And like, I just described that, he always described rape as love making, and, oh, I'm showing you love by raping you, and you should be thanking me. Like, I'm thinking to myself, no, I've never made love like this. I've never had a guy rape me and, been totally for it. Like, that's not right. That's not even, it just seems really stupid. Anyways, when I'm talking about remembering what it's like to kiss, in the worst moment of my life, when I'm getting sexually harassed and raped, and I'm being threatened all the time, and I'm sleeping, with daggers and swords around the bed where I sleep, and a gun, I kept trying to think, okay, what can I think to take, like, if I can't leave here, what thought in my mind can I have that's going to make me feel freer, that's going to make me feel like I'm not here? And it was thinking about kissing my ex, because that was love. That's where love is. When I was thinking about my ex, I'm like, I had love when I was kissing this person. I don't have love when this person is forcing themselves on me and making me cry about it. So basically, that's what the song is about. Thank you for listening.